another Tekoa Talk, and we are continuing our God Speaks series as a church. And one of the things that we wanted to do was just share ways that God speaks. Sometimes it's a little bit, mystical, like are the clouds going to part and the angels going to start singing, or bushes going to start blowing up, or, what does it look like? But the reality is God is speaking every day. And he is there if we are willing to listen. And so we just wanted to share practically in our lives how we've seen him speak, to maybe give you some ideas of how he's speaking to you, or give you ideas of ways to look out for maybe how he's speaking to you.
Yeah, I think I can start it off. One of the ways that he often speaks to me is through just a small voice in my prayer time. And it's taking me a long time to discern what that voice sounds like, and whether it's just my own thoughts running through my head, or whether that's really God. But as I make space, as I listen, I've been able to recognize through experience, by knowing that when God says something and then it happens, or I see him bring people into community, or that voice of I'm supposed to reach out to a friend and encourage them, and I do, and they're going through the worst day of their life pretty much, and they're like, God spoke to you through you to me. And so that still voice, that small voice, as we quiet ourselves, pray, what do you think of, what is that kind of inner voice saying?
Yeah, one way he speaks to me a lot is during quiet time through scripture. So when I'm reading over scripture, there's times where like words will just start popping out at me, or it's a scripture I've heard before but never really like processed. But sometimes it does feel like the scripture is like written for me, and so when I'm reading it, I feel like it's coming to life in a new way of, this is what I'm speaking over your life. This is the vision I want you to have for your future, or whatever it may be. But through scripture, which sometimes it's hard to think about because it was written so many years ago, like how in the world is this even possible? But it's even more of a reminder of how much it's a living word, that there is truth that can be spoken to us through scripture.
That's good. One of the other ways that God often speaks to me, and he speaks to Allie in this way as well, is through nature. And when we get out on a walk, sometimes just in our neighborhood, and I see the trees, or especially when I see a beautiful sunset. I don't do it as much anymore, but when I lived in Southern California, I would often go to the beach, and just the vastness of the ocean, and getting to see God in that. And it reminds me of who he is, and who I am in the middle of that, but I'm reassured that he is there and he's present. And so even just crazy ways of seeing a super green tree, and the greenness of it standing out to me in the new life, or just different ways, but through his creation, through nature, God often speaks.
Mm-hmm. Another way that I feel like God often speaks is through worship music. So one thing that we try to do is have worship music playing in our home, or when we're in the car, and different things, because there's a hope that comes from it, and the reminders of God. And so I think sometimes when I'm listening to worship music, there's been times that I'm just completely broken of the reminder of his promises and how true he is, how he's not forsaken us. I think I can vividly remember a time, it was right after my mom passed away, and we were listening to the Prince of Peace song. And just, there's a line that talks about like, he's there with you in the darkness, this Prince of Peace. And it just broke me of like, I felt so much like I was in the darkness, and just that reminder that he is still there and he is still good. And so I think sometimes those words are words that like I can't quite put together because I'm not that creative, but it gives me that reassurance and that comfort from him. And so I feel like sometimes through those words he is speaking.
That's good. Yeah, and another way that I've often seen God is through just circumstances, or through things in the world. I remember when I lived in LA, so I'm in LA, I started seeing the word Boston everywhere. Like people would walk by with a Boston University sweatshirt, or just in the news, or just all these things. The word like Boston started sticking out, and it's not that it was never there before. I mean, I'm living in LA, like Boston's a major city, but it's on the other coast.
Right.
And so God was trying to do something by, like, it seemed like highlighting a box around every time that word came up, and he was trying to tell me something. He was trying to tell me, there's something in Boston for you, and like that's where I ended up going to grad school because of that. But I think in our world, our circumstances, and sometimes a lot of times, what comes with that is a sense of peace or unease, and that inner sense of I don't feel comfortable about this, or you know what, this seems like the right thing to do. I don't even know why, but it seems like my family should do this, or shouldn't do this. And that inner peace, or the lack of peace, can often be a way that God speaks as well.
Yeah. And another one for me, and I promise we'll wrap up here soon, is through other people, through community, and doing life with people. There's been times where it's in a similar vein, but like multiple people will say the same thing to me. Or I'll be praying to God, asking for direction or wisdom on something, and out of the blue, someone will text me or call me and be like, "Hey, I was thinking about you," like blah 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 blah, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I was just asking God for some clarity on that." Or there's different times where in life people will randomly reach out to me, and it's when I'm having a really rough time, and I see that reminder that God sees me and that there's comfort coming from other people. And so there's just been different circumstances and seasons, but I think it's a reminder of why it's so important to do life with people, because God can speak through other people to you.
Well, there's 6 or 7 ways that God has spoken to us. It's certainly not an exhaustive list. There's other ways as well. Last week we challenged everybody to take 5 minutes a day meditating and making space for God to speak. If you missed that, I encourage you to go back and check that episode out. But I want to encourage you this week to be looking for other ways for God to speak to you, maybe ways that He doesn't normally speak to you, or you haven't ever heard Him in that way before. Maybe go for a walk, look in nature, but just look for new ways that God is speaking. And we believe that God is alive, that He's active, and He wants to speak to you this week. So we want to invite you, hit the subscribe button below, like this video, and let us know, how is God speaking to you.